The Clinch knot is one of the most popular fishing knots, and it exists in several different versions. In this video, I test the Trilene knot. How many turns do you need to get the strongest knot, and does line thickness make a difference? It is a widespread belief that the Clinch knot requires 4 to 6 turns, regardless of line thickness. Here I test the knot with 6 different line diameters. I have also made a large detailed test with 4 different versions of the Clinch knot. Which one is strongest? Simple Clinch, Fisherman's knot, Trilene knot, or improved Trilene? The results in that test are very surprising. There's a link in the description. I call this series Knot Science. You might say not science. But at least I can say that I have tried to be as precise and consistent in my tests as possible. The Trilene knot is easy to tie. The line is passed twice through the eye of the hook or swivel. After that, it is wrapped around the main line a certain number of times. And that is exactly what we are testing. How many turns are needed to make the strongest Trilene knot? The line is passed through the gap between the swivel and the knot. The knot is tightened, but not fully. Before that, it is a good idea to lubricate the knot by wetting it. Now the line can be pulled completely tight. For all tests in this video, I used a monofilament nylon line from a well-known brand. This is not a line test, it is a comparison between different knots. We start with this thin line. Normally it is recommended to use 4 to 6 turns around the main line, but I start with just 1 turn, just to see what happens. Of course, nobody would tie the knot this way. It is surprising that the knot is relatively strong with just 1 turn. 2.2 kilograms, 4.9 pounds is good for a 6-pound line. The total result after 3 tests is surprisingly good for a 6-pound line, considering that only 1 turn was used. We now try with 2 turns. The result is naturally a bit better than the first test. We move on to 3 turns. And surprisingly, the result is worse than with 2 turns. With 4 turns, the knot becomes weaker again, and the same happens with 5 turns. The result is clear. The more turns, the weaker the knot becomes. There is no reason to make detailed tests with 6 and 7 turns. The knot becomes even weaker. And in the remaining tests, we will not test with 1 turn either. Test with 0.23 millimeters line, 11.5 pounds. And again, we perform 3 tests of each knot to find the most accurate average. We test the knot with 2, 3, 4 and 5 turns. 2 and 3 turns are very close, and already at 4 turns the knot becomes weaker. And now a test with 0.28 millimeters line, 14.9 pounds. Again tests with 2, 3, 4 and 5 turns. And again 2 and 3 turns are best, and at 4 turns the knot strength decreases significantly. Now we go quickly through the last test to reach the final result. There will always be natural variation in such a test, but here we see that 2 turns are best with the thin line in the first test. But otherwise, 3 turns are best for the other line diameters. In the thinner lines up to 0.33 millimeters, 20 pounds, there is not much difference between 2 and 3 turns. In the thicker lines, 4 turns are almost as good as 3 turns. The test shows quite clearly that 5 turns are too many and that the knot becomes weaker. Why does the knot get weaker with many turns? My conclusion, entirely my own, is that many turns weaken the line inside the knot itself. Here we see that the line becomes thinner as the knot is tightened. And often there are also visible damages to the part of the line inside the knot. I have done several tests to see whether there is a difference between fluoro and monofilament. But my sample tests showed that the pattern is the same for fluoro as we have seen in this test. There is no significant difference. I have not tested with braided line. The Trilene knot is not very good for braided line. And here I recommend using the Palomar knot or the uni knot, both of which I have tested with both monofilament and braided line. You will find links in the description. Conclusion: for thin lines use 2 to 3 turns, and for thicker lines use 3 to 4 turns to tie the strongest Trilene knot.